So I chose to go last because I knew Josh was going to go right before me, and I would just say what he said, and then we can all get to the questions for the panel. But no, I have the obligatory, my format got messed up, the obligatory company overview slides. Those are all the slides I'm going to share, that I just want to give a little point of view and context that I think might help our panel discussion. So, the font's wrong here, but for those of you who don't know Owens Corning, we make a lot of different stuff, primarily residential building products and supplies. We're in the roofing, insulation, doors, and composites spaces. We operate in a lot of countries. We've grown through a lot of acquisitions. I share this because I want everybody to understand that if think you've got data problems or culture problems, or everybody's doing things a little bit differently, you've got gaps in knowledge or differential of capabilities by site, I understand the problem, right? It's a problem everybody has, but it doesn't change how you go about solving it. But it's not like we've got 3 plants and they're all exactly the same, and we have no turnover, right? We're a dynamic company, so we do pretty much everything, or a large part of what goes into building a home. I just wanted to set the stage for everybody, so you kind of understand what I'm talking about when I talk about how we're approaching this. Complicated manufacturing, lots of small plants, lots of people, lots of systems, lots of languages, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big problem. So I was kind of half joking when I said I'll just agree with Josh, and can I use some of your slides? No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I just want to sort of make a couple comments, because one of the things that I do a lot is come to events like this. I've been here quite a few times, and I'm always here to interact and meet new people and understand people, try to understand the problems that people have, where they align with the same problems we face organizationally, and then spend some time trying to figure out where we might be able to learn from each other. That's the real value to this and any other kind of forum. But at the end of the day, I always try to oversimplify stuff because it helps me set the perspective. I like to zoom out and then kind of zoom in and continue to do that, so I'm not working on the wrong things. But at the end of the day, while we're talking about AI and we're talking about data fabrics and all that stuff, at the end of the day, the problem we're trying to solve is actually pretty simple. And we overcomplicate it, I think. What we're actually trying to do is make better decisions faster about what to do with our assets and how to get the most out of our people who are operating those assets, right? That's business. That's what we're trying to do. So if you think about that for a second, and just bear with me, I'll drill back down to a reasonable technical nerd level in a second. How you actually choose to go solve that problem of making better decisions turns out is heavily dependent upon the assets you've got, your asset base, your talent that you've got in the organization. Josh touched on that, the shift in talent that we've all been living through. And then the available technology, and usually it's the emerging technology that comes in and starts to define how you solve the problem. It's not the old technology or the relatively new. It's usually the next thing that gets exciting and gets people sucked in. It seems to me, though, if I was talking with lunch yesterday at lunchtime with someone about this, it seems to me what we do as a collective group of technical manufacturing focused folks is we have a tendency to hype wash the old-fashioned problem of just stabilizing our assets. We just hype wash it with whatever the term of the day is. And if you think about it, hype washing the real work, which is trying to fundamentally understand what our assets are doing, what the potential is, what the gap is, and how we close that gap to maximize productivity. I think we cause a lot of confusion when we hype wash that. And if you think about it, right, we could be having this session. It could be called the digital twin data fabric. It could be called the AR, VR, machine learning, APC, DCS, blockchain, pneumatic control system, industrial data fabric, right? We could go all the way back in time. The underlying problems haven't changed with manufacturing, driving stable use of the assets through better decision making. And so I just want everyone to point that out, because I think it helps when we have a conversation about where we can learn and share from each other, if we all kind of focus and understand and recognize that it's kind of the same thing we're trying to solve. So let's just step back and talk about the actual problems we're trying to solve at the point of need. Like, I think Josh did a good job of getting knowledge to the worker at the point of, I can't remember your term. The term we use at Owens Corning is getting knowledge to the worker at the point of need in the flow of work. kind of defines the problem. We don't talk about tablets or AR, VR. I mean, ultimately we do, but try to start the conversation with how do I get the information, the knowledge, the guidance to the worker at the point of need in the flow of work, so it's not an extra step. So I actually think, now that I've told you that I think this is all about the same problem we've been working on for the last couple hundred years in terms of optimizing our assets, I think it's actually really simple on how you go fix it. I think that the mental model you use to go walk through it is pretty simple. And it's basically, again, better decision making. So the first thing I need to know is what's going on, right? And so it starts with what I like to call data transparency. What is actually happening with your assets versus what you think is happening? And we spend a lot of time talking about that because it's an area that's just, I showed you a picture of our organization and kind of our breadth. We have a lot of different sources of data and silos of data and regions of data and naming conventions and tag naming standards and lots of different systems. It's a mess, right? So the question is, how do you create transparency to what the assets are actually doing? And even if you did a perfect job of that, even if you were to invest $30 or $40 million and just get all your data organized and structured and just like landed in some magical place in the cloud, that is actually worth $0. Think about it. It's negative return. You're going to spend $30 million to put your data in a place, and it's just going to sit there. Because right now, in a lot of cases, the data is sitting in the subsystem, or the data is sitting on the shop floor, or it's sitting in a notebook on the shelf. It's sitting there today. So bringing it all together just to have it all together is worth $0, negative ROI. Anybody disagree with that? We'll fight over lunch. Anybody? So it's only valuable if you can take it and do something with it, right? You actually have to turn that data into some actionable insights. And so the way you do that, I like, again, simplicity here. Transparency is the first step. Second step is collaboration. You actually have to collaborate across domains. And by domains of knowledge, domains of experience, things like reliability, process, safety, quality. Those are all domains, right? And there's domain experts. And you gotta take the information and put it through the lens of those domain experts. Because again, this is all about making decisions, better decisions about how to run your assets. So if you think about it that way, I'm gonna collaborate to solve problems, bring in the right domains, domain expertise, they're gonna have the right data. What that kind of leads you to is, hey, you know, the data I need is actually informed by what is needed by the experts to answer the questions they're gonna ask to drive stability and solve problems. Right? That's the key. So if you let that requirement of those domain experts, the questions they ask, if you let that define what your data structure is, what data is important, you'll be on a good path to building that industrial data fabric that you need to do whatever it is you need to do. And don't lose sight of that, because it's really easy for people to say, I'm gonna take all the data I've got and just throw it in a pile, and then we'll sort it out later, we'll AI it, put blockchain on there, and it'll be great. That actually is not the way to do it. And the one thing I don't disagree with, Josh, I'm picking on you all day, Josh, because I love your presentation, but the 4 phases of maturity, like I don't think those aren't stages. Like you apply those to each and every problem, and I think that's what is built into that. I know we've talked about it, but it's not like I'm at stage 1 today, and the next year I'm gonna be at stage 2, and the next year I'm gonna be at stage 3. You can actually go look at one little problem that requires a little piece of data, and you can go from stage 1 to 4 very quickly for that one problem. And then the next problem in the facility or in the plant, you can go from stage 1 to 4 very quickly. And you think about it, the thin slice approach helps you pull the right information in, because not all information is created equally, not all data is equally useful. So we don't need all the data, but we do need the right data. And how do you define the right data? By defining the problem, define the domain expertise you need, connecting those 2 things together. Now this is where I get really excited, and this is where I actually am gonna I'm gonna mention the AI stuff, is the next step in driving long-term value and scaling that value creation and maximizing the impact of your resources, your people resources, your expertise, your talent, your skills, your learnings, is actually being able to capture that knowledge. So step 1, transparency. Step 2, effective collaboration across domains. Doesn't need to be people collaborating, could be agents collaborating, right? Could be third parties collaborating with you. The third step is, how do you minimize relearning? So when you solve a problem, domain experts with the data that they need to answer the questions, and you make better decisions about your assets. At that point, you got to capture that. Otherwise, you're going to do it again tomorrow, and that's not efficient and effective. So how do you capture and codify and make sure that those actions, those positive actions, continue to drive the same result and adapt and change over time? And I think that's where AI's value is specifically agentic AI and special purpose intelligences are going to be really, really important. Is agents and systems that know how to solve the problem repeatedly, do it over and over again, and continue to improve and evolve. That's where the real potential is. But you can't start there. There are 4 stages you got to go through. I think that's true. I got to get the data. I got to combine it with the domain expertise. I got to make an example of identify the gaps in what my asset's running, and then I've got to actually figure out how to go solve that problem. So all that said, as you capture and codify that knowledge and information, and I don't care whether you're in a system, in a control loop, in a standard operating procedure with a Post-it note stuck next to the operator's console, you got to codify it, and you got to capture it, and you got to put it into action. So again, pretty simple. Create transparency of what's happening, enable collaboration across domains to enable better decision-making, capture and codify those actions, and at the end of the day, if you make really good decisions, you'll have stable and reliable assets, and that's why I think this is easy. I think the biggest problem is that we don't talk about what we're actually trying to do. We end up talking about, whatever hype term of the day is prevalent. So we don't necessarily always connect the dots that what we talked about 7 years ago around advanced process control is exactly the same problem we're working on today while we're talking about AI and digital twins and Bitcoin. So at the end of the day, the objective and the problem we're trying to solve is about fundamentally changing the way we make decisions, solve problems as well, to take into account or take full advantage of new, existing, old, and emerging technologies. Like we're not turning the page. This should be a build-up and a continuous evolution. So that's all I have to say. And then again, just refer back to Josh's presentation for all the details on how you do it technically, because I'm pretty aligned with that.